All right. There's more people joining. Hey, John.
Hey, John.
Is there someone who'd like to start bringing up a topic?
I have two that I'd love to get your feedback on. So the first one is related to agents and data mesh, and in particular, what we're calling smart data products. Obviously, it's a data product, nice boundary, owner, etc., but it has an LLM that allows us to do some really interesting stuff with it. And the second one, I think, is something that's near and dear to John's heart, and I'm working with him on, which is AI or agent-enabled data engineering, which we believe strongly would benefit from the notion of data products and hence data mesh. So that's I'll let John elaborate when we get to that one. But those are two that I think I'd welcome feedback from the group.
That's pretty neat, because I also had a topic in mind which is quite closely related to the first one, having to do with kind of AI and using sort of semantics to make those data products and their contents understandable and usable for AI. So certainly fits well with them.
Perfect.
But then let's dive into that topic to begin with. I like it as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Eric, if you have a broader context that you want to give.
Yeah.
Do you have a particular question?
Yeah. So the question really is what are the opportunities to combining AI and agents in particular with data products and data mesh? And we think the ability to for example, to allow natural language, English, or any language for that matter, I suppose, interaction with the data product is particularly useful. If you put the LLM inside the data product, then you facilitate that capability. So that's one thing. The second thing is if you use and combine with the AI-enabled data engineering, you can actually use some of the AI capability inside the data product to actually do enhanced levels of processing, semantic recognition, etc. So that's where we see two capabilities. One is interacting with the data product in a smarter way, I suppose. Then using AI to optimize some of the transformations and capability inside the data product.
Yeah, that's
the first question, I suppose, just to kick it off, is Juha. Hopefully, I got your name right.
Yeah, it's imagine it's with the Y, so it's
Juha.
Juha.
Okay, so Juha, I don't know how close that is to you, but you mentioned that you're doing something similar or have a similar interest. So why don't I turn it over to you and maybe elaborate on where your focus is at, and then we can let the group opine on the perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yeah, that's perfect. So I'm kind of coming at this from slightly different angle, but I think this is very much related, because what I'm now working on with one of my clients is basically what I would call maybe an actual semantic layer. So not those BI things, but the actual semantics of this is our data product. These are the whatever tables and views and APIs and so on and so forth in there within that data product. So how do we kind of add semantic information on top of that, so that when someone uses an AI tool for kind of for BI related purposes, I would suppose. So they are asking AI, for example, something about I don't know, help me find our logistics costs in Germany for last year or whatever. So imagine that sort of a search question, for example, for AI. It needs to have semantic information embedded into the data product, or at least very closely connected with that data product, so that it can find that, all right, well, this is the logistics costs data product, and this is the field where we can filter by country, or whatever that might be. So what I'm working on there is kind of figuring out that connection, first of all, where do we have that semantic information? Does it live inside the data product? I don't think that's a good idea, because we also want to be able to refer to multiple different data products from the same kind of semantic concept, as it were. So now the question kind of is that how do we make those data products findable and addressable via these sorts of enhanced semantics around it? That's kind of what I'm working on right now, and that's I think a very interesting question as well. But I think it relates to your other point as well about engineering. So if we were able to use natural language to kind of tell our data product development tooling or whatever that, hey, I actually want this to be aggregated according to country and year or whatever, then that would also benefit from kind of semantic information being appended to that actual data already in the very early stages, which is why I kind of said actual semantic layer, because I think that the way that we usually talk about semantic layers, it comes into play way too late in the process. We should have that semantic connection throughout the whole thing from the very beginning, actually from the source systems already. So that's kind of where I am at with this. I don't know if that brings anything to mind. John, you're on mute.
Of course I am. Juha, I love it. So I want to unpack this thing you said that I've said myself. What do you mean by an actual semantic layer versus what one of those BI tools do? Because I think that's an important theme. And what do you mean by that? Because I also have said that. So go ahead, and then I'll throw in why I would say something to that effect.
Sure. Yeah. I'm not sure if I have like any actual working description for it, but I did like when Shane Gibson started talking about kind of context plane, so that there is some sort of architectural layer or sort of logical layer above and around all the data we have, which gives that data context. So it's not just, we think of data warehousing, we have these kind of layers on top of each other and the data moves between layers. But this is not about that. It's not about kind of data lineage. It's kind of sitting on top of everything and connecting the semantic information into all data, not just the BI end results. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
Okay, well, Tom, and thanks for joining, Tom DeWolf.
Oh, hi, Tom.
Hi everyone.
Posted his interview with Zamak at Data Mesh Live 2025, and I commented on it. I think it was around minute 12 through 17. Zamak is talking about this question. She's asked about domain-driven design, and then she makes this point about, I think we're going to need a semantic layer, and data mesh might allow us to, in parallel, decompose and address the problem. And so I think it's a fundamental question I have when I hang out with software engineers that love DDD and whatever I am, who works with data mesh. It's this notion that there's an overarching domain, and it's kind of, because I think the semantic plane you described, I don't know Shane Gibson's point of view on the thing, but as an enterprise data modeler from 30 years ago, we used to pretend there was an enterprise data model, and pretend's the wrong word. We spent
I totally get it.
we spent a lot of time genuinely trying to eat that elephant, and I wonder to what extent DDD had an answer to the enterprise. And my observation is I don't think they do, other than to say it's a super domain or something above a domain. But I think it's an important question, and I think there is a necessity to decouple the domains and allow them to think about the products in their domains. So the domain has to own the ubiquitous language, the semantic understanding of the domain, but one domain is not an enterprise make. And as we know in data, you need to cross domains to get value. And so I think it's an unsolved problem, but I I'm very curious because I think this is what we're being asked to solve. How do you quickly access and find and use, trust, all the things? Data, how do you move fast with data without a semantic layer? And, when we do data strategy, we have to start with some sort of context or enterprise-wide set of domains or models. And I think it's a fascinating area because I think there's tools that are trying to say, now we can do enterprise grade data modeling. And so I think there's an intersection of all of those things happening right now. I do not, as you can tell, it's this stream of consciousness. I don't think there's a clear answer to how it all fits together, but that is the area we all have to study, because if we believe that the mesh can accelerate data, understanding, trust, findability, all that stuff, then we're going to need something at that layer, something that is a semantic plane. I love it. Yeah, but I agree with you. What BI tools do, they have no notion of domain per se. They just have universes or whatever we want to call them, but they have their own, usually YAML or some nasty version of something that defines how you can interact with the tables and the entities. But it's at the physical layer, not at the logical or conceptual layer. So I'm just sort of stating the confusion, but not the answer. Do you see it the way I did, or would you add anything to what I've said, based on the points I made? Does what you saying make sense, or do you agree, disagree type of thing?
No, I agree. And I think what you said about domains and kind of the ubiquitous language there, I think that the kind of semantics, if we go into knowledge stuff and everything like ontologies, which used to be a sort of forbidden word when you were doing data modeling some years back, people's eyes would glaze over when you started talking about ontologies. But nowadays you can, which is cool. But what I kind of have been thinking is that, yeah, domains sort of have their own ontologies, but they should be linked because we need that cross-domain ability.
Yeah, right. And I think that is, if you go to schema.org, that's ultimately all you can do is link. Sorry. Anyway, Eric.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow a question for John and Juha. You mentioned knowledge graphs, but taxonomies, ontologies. What success have you had using things like AI, LLMs, to actually aid in the generation of taxonomies, ontologies, and eventually the semantics? We've had some success. John and myself are working on some client engagement together, and we've had some success in an earlier data strategy part of work, and now we're getting to the next stage. But we found some success with that, not necessarily around ontology specifically in taxonomies, but it's led us to those concepts, and we're using AI in innovative ways. Have you seen that, Juha, or anybody else?
Well, I can give a quick answer. Short answer is no, but that has more to do with the maturity level of the organizations I've been working with for the last few years now. Lots of kind of manufacturing and whatnot, where we're pretty much at the very basic level of understanding these topics. But we did some experiments. I used to work at the startup for a data modeling tool. So we actually did experiments with an AI agent that would basically figure out entities and relationships for you from, some business language story or process or whatever. I think those were sort of, they were good. I was sort of hopeful that might go somewhere, but it's already been a couple of years, and back then the models weren't as good as they are now. So I don't know what they're doing with those experiments today in that same organization, which I left already 2 years ago. So it might be that they are far ahead. But I do think it's possible, and I am looking into this with one of my clients right now, that could we have an AI that goes into your whatever document bank you might have about your processes and whatnot, and pick those kind of semantic objects from there. But I still think that at least to a degree, those core entities that might come that way have to be checked by a human.
One thing that I could add but I think we are somehow not understanding that we are dealing with a problem that is bigger than what we're trying to deal with. So basically, in Decathlon, we did what you said, meaning we used business processes and enterprise architecture to create entities that are cross-domain, but still relate to business processes. And so what we did in data is to structure the whole patrimony like that. And now it helps engineers in the application ground to reconstruct their own systems and to improve their understanding of the business context. But I think we did that without understanding that it was actually difficult. I mean, we were, so we just wrote an article actually about that. So yeah, so we are going to publish it. And now that I hear you, I say, okay, maybe that was actually something hard to do. I had no idea. But I mean, what was the trigger was the application ground was such a mess that starting in data with the business team was the solution for them as well.
Brilliant. Oh, you need to let us all know when you post. We all want to read that and contribute.
Sharif,
on my side, I mean, it's a bit on picking up at what Gail was saying. I think there's kind of like it's always kind of the dream of having, business concepts eventually not generate or give actual products that people can use, and that's kind of always been the dream since way before AI.
Yeah.
And we're kind of retrying with AI, but I think it really it helps if you have semantic layer, but then the data engineering part kind of connects to that and use like AI, the good old coding with AI, use that layer to create stuff. This really helps and really saves times, because otherwise it without that usually it hallucinates quite a lot. It gives you it doesn't really understand raw data models from tables, for example. But if you give it just a little bit more context, then it's kind of surprising what it can do and how you can just prompt it and it will generate something somewhat good, like a very good starting point.
Maybe to add to that, so we tried some experiments, a little prototyping on using MCP with Claude, the agent. And the data we had exposed through MCP were, well, what data products do you have, like from a metadata point of view, and also the data contracts. And we had the semantics inlined, like from a semantic model inlined in the contract through the MCP. So we offered to the agent an an enriched data contract with all the information taken. So it's really useful for the AI. And then we were able to construct, so either to find the right data product basically through the agent. We could request access. That was also part of that prototype. And then we could also query the data because we knew the physical structure, but we knew also the semantics. And the AI model was very good in figuring that out. That was really interesting. I think there's some potential. But I was very curious when maybe to drive that after the other people who raised their hands. I was very curious about you, Eric, what you said at the beginning, putting the LLM inside a data product. So this kind of, let's really stir the thought process.
Yeah. So
perhaps we have some minutes at the end of the meeting to go back to that. But
yeah, I'm happy to give you some insights on that. It is something that we're experimenting with right now. So happy to have that. I don't want to detract from this conversation, though. I think this is particularly interesting for me, especially as we see clients actually using some of the terminology and words semantic layer already. So I want to let other people weigh in on this as opposed to, but I'd be happy to talk about the other topic a little bit later.
Thank you, Encounter.
Yeah, one question to Simon. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. as John said earlier, data products definitely going to cross-domain. Many of the data products. Now, in your data contracts for a data product, how are you defining that semantic layer which is going cross-domain?
Now there's a two. I don't want to say layers because let's say two layers. We have the data contracts, which are very close to the physical world. They basically give you guarantees against physical tables, physical things. And then you have the semantic world, where you say, well, this is an order, and an order has an order ID, for instance. But this is only for the sales domain. And then there's a purchase domain that also has an order, and that also has an order ID or something. And then you have to link. Basically, from the bottom, from a contract, you link up. And what we do is basically we traverse that. So when the LLM requests, I want this data product might be interesting, we inline all the things from the semantic, from the upper layer. Sorry, with my I try to push it to that, and then we present it like an enriched, not like a very, very RESTful API, but really an enriched data contract, including the semantic information, and that has given us really great results. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Here, so then we are going across a cross-domain, right? And to another point, John's point, now DDD, data-driven, domain-driven design patterns. Are we adhering to the rules of the DDD, or are we breaking? Now, are we the data professionals? Now, if we go back earlier, I think somebody else also made a point. Product engineering teams, when they are designing these DDDs, they are only thinking about their processes within their domain. But here we data professionals now have to go across the domains for defining these data products. So how do you guys see that fitting into really adhering to these DDD principles?
Tom,
You guys see my point?
Tom, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I can try to answer a very big question that you posed there. But I think the first starting point is that when you talk about domain-driven design, is that the fact that they embrace the fact that there is not one model, and there's not one enterprise model, and that the context in which you use a certain language is important. And then you typically also have a customer in one domain and a customer in another domain, and it means completely different stuff. And I think also there the challenge lies in what we discussed earlier, putting LLMs and AI on top of it. Because if equally as it is for humans, confusing that there are two customer definitions, when you connect one model to two contexts and it gets a contradictory definition from a certain concept, then they will answer you, but then the hallucination starts, and then the wrong answer starts. So being domain driven and attaching an AI model to data, also it's also important to respect those domain boundaries. And I think that's the biggest challenge in making sure that those things keep working.
I think in data also, we forget about functional responsibility. Like when we talk about cross-domain, we say we take data from cross-domain and then we deliver a cross-domain analysis, which is not true. We deliver a functional responsibility that is aligned with the use case because you do consumer-aligned data product. So then it will enter into your functional domain. And this is really the beauty of it, is that you remap the impacted business processes again. And that is really cool. So if you think about business processes and functional responsibility, I think mesh is just DDD for me in general. And when I look at this perspective with engineers, they really like it because they say, oh, that's amazing, because you could do DDD without the problem of building microservices, and it's impossible because each data contract is very easy to build, right? So microservices in data are easier to maintain than in a real life application, I would say. Well, at least in my past experiences, right? But yeah, I mean, the perspective of consumer aligned is very important, and it's sometimes very hard to really make into people's mind, especially when the people are not very mature. But yeah, it can work definitely if you think about business impact, basically.
Just to tap into that quickly, because when you say consumer aligned, and you combine data from different domains there, maybe that's also a point where you are not, where the existing domain models are not suitable anymore, and that you have to create your own new model for that consumer aligned data, so that the definition is cleared out. Otherwise, what are people looking at the dashboard?
Yeah, for sure. But then this pertains to the domain as a new responsible functionality, as a new functionality, basically. That is what is really amazing then.
Yeah,
sorry, Chris,
the only thing,
I jumped in.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But the only thing I wanted to add to the discussion, because I like it a lot, but is that in our experience, most of the value from those data products come when you cross domain boundaries, right? When you stay within a single domain, usually they don't even care about any data mesh stuff. They just get the data from their own systems and do their own thing with it. But that also brings, Tom, I liked a lot what you said. If you put an AI on that, like in which domain are you querying the data, right? And the AI will be confused when you go cross domain, just like the human would. I haven't seen a good solution for that yet, but I'm very curious for maybe Simon, you raised your hands as well. Maybe you have something to add there. I'm curious to how some other people solve that problem when you go cross domain.
Yeah, my comment here, maybe an example regarding domain, because this is interesting for us. So we have like 3 source aligned data products, different domains, and then you create an aggregated data product that basically combines that. How do we do that with ownership? Well, we have now this new aggregated data product. We can define a team that owns that. Okay, fine. But some fields are just passed through sometimes. So who owns that field? If you don't change it, but you still expose it in that thing. So for me, it's not as in the operational world where typically you own everything and you manage that. I think ownership is a little bit split, because think of like an e-commerce domain. There's the order ID, and if the order ID is passed everywhere because everyone wants to associate their stuff with the order ID. But the order ID is if you don't change it, you don't really own that column. Do you understand what I mean? So this is also related between crossing these domains, because each domain has their own identifiers, their own attributes. Yeah,
you're kind of borrowing things, right?
Oh, sorry.
No, just a quick comment. I'm okay. Yeah, continue, please.
I was going to say something. In one of my previous books, we highlighted the whole notion around supply chains and the whole idea of delegated responsibility. But ultimately, what you're talking about is a data product supply chain where you have multiple things getting assembled into a bigger piece. The analogy of a physical supply chain forces you to talk about contracts. It forces you to talk about ownership in very explicit terms. So what I've seen successful is using real world analogies to actually solve practical problems. Now, the problem you're highlighting, though, is one of assembling a data product that assembles parts from other ones. And again, that's the supply chain analogy. Now, the real question is, can you enforce, like supply chains have legal boundaries, legally enforceable? You can't really do that necessarily inside an enterprise, but the concept is the same. So is it an organizational issue that is difficult to overcome? Because I think the models in the real world are out there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like in the organization I went, for example, customer interactions were sometimes owned by different domains, right? Because customer interactions, you have marketing, you have a lot of things about sales, you have a lot of things of entering a point of sale, for example, a lot of stuff like that. So depending on the orientation, strategic orientation of the company, then you would choose to put interactions into the sales domain or into the customer domain. But that's really what is the business impact that you are having. Something that we really love to do with this approach of DDD is that then we can diminish the number of aggregation we have in the data lake, in the data teams, and push that to the front, like the operational system. So for example, customer interaction, this should not be into a data platform. This should be owned by someone in the operational ground, right? Because we do management rules that are not supposed to be in the data team. And we are a bottleneck and it's a mess. So what we have chosen to do is really to, when we don't have a choice, we do that ourselves. And then we try to push it to the operational layer. And I think it's a way to better govern the data. And also, for example, with the case of interactions, customer interactions, now there are a lot of things we can do in the operational layer with completely real-time data and Kafka uploading. So this is really cool because the point of sales now have dashboards that are completely like with customer segmentation updated, this kind of stuff. And all of that were a lot of real-time things we couldn't do in a data platform, for example. So we completely pushed it apart from data, basically. But yeah. But you need to have a data team that is happy with not having work anymore.
Just a quick comment on that. I really love the idea, Gail, of the kind of pushing it down to the operational layer. I've started to think, I don't know if this is kind of heretical or what, but I've started to think that I don't really kind of care much about the division between operational and analytical layers anymore. Because I feel like, especially when I'm looking at, and the most of the I do is with the semantics and data models or whatnot, and to me, it's all the same. If someone deals with customer interactions in some system and some team, works with those data points and they know them very well, then obviously they should also be involved in the kind of analytical use of that data as well.
I got to run, but beautiful ending. I love it. Thank you, guys and gals.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got to run as well. Thanks. This has been really cool.
Yeah, great discussion, guys.
Yeah,
As Chris said
thank
in
you,
the
guys.
chat, the recording will be shared afterwards. Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Bye.